Hey everyone, Wags here from Eagle Dynamics, and welcome to episode 12 of our DCS A-18C Hornet academic series. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at delivery of unguided bombs. And not only will this be important for bombing, but you'll also learn some of the principles for later guided bombs like JDAMs and laser guided bombs. Let's get started. Alright, so let's take a look at delivering unguided bombs in the Hornet. And the first thing we'll do is we'll come down to the left DDI area. We'll set master arm to arm and the master mode to AG or air to ground. On the attack page, we'll go ahead and select that to stores. And this will start to look familiar again. So at the very top, all the different air to ground munitions loaded on your jet will be listed. In this case, we have just a 76, and that denotes a BDU 76 training bomb, which is a small training bomb with a small smoke charge, a little blue bundle of love. And to select it, we'll go ahead and press 76. And at this point now, we have our wing form with the number of rounds remaining, master arm setting. We have TST on the wingtips, which means we have some captive carry AIM-9 training rounds. And then we have 4 stations loaded with training bombs. Now the diamond indicates a pylon with a modifier to allow carriage of multiple munitions. We see we have 6, which indicates the number of weapons on that station, so we have 24 BDUs. And then below that, as you may have guessed, the 76 indicates the BDU 76. And the box indicates the station that is currently set for release. Below that, we have our program settings. In this case, Program 1 or Prog 1. And each air-to-ground munition on the Hornet can have up to 5 different programs. And each program consists of different elements, from its mode to its fusing to its drag settings, its quantity, and so on. So we'll do an example here of setting up a program. In this case, we'll set up a CCIP program. So going to mode, it's the weapon delivery mode. We'll see that we have actually 3 different weapon delivery modes for the early access Hornet. First we have auto, which is just like you have in many ways the CCRP mode in the A-18C. Below that we have CCIP mode, which is continuously computed impact point, which again is just like the A-18C in many ways. Put the thing on the thing to make the latter thing dead. And then finally you have manual mode, which is a lot like the manual mode we looked at in the rockets lesson. So in this case though, I'm going to keep it on CCIP. Then we have our mechanical fuse, and the BDU has a small fuse in the nose, so I'm going to select nose. There's no electronic fuse, and there's really no drag service, so we'll keep those on off. And free fall, or FF. Next, we'll set the number of bombs to come off with the release. So we'll go to the USC, and we see we have quantity, or QTY. We'll select that, and when I put the number, I want 6. So 6, and enter. And we have 6 now on the program. And now we'll determine the multiple of bombs that will come off per pulse. So multiple, I want 2 to come out per pulse. Now that's set to 2. And finally now we'll determine the spacing in feet between pulses. So I'll go to interval or int and say enter 500 feet. Enter. And that's program 1. So we have a CCIP delivery. But let's say I want to go ahead and do an auto delivery. Rather than having to reprogram it on the fly, I'll go ahead now and set up a second program. So I'll go to prog. Now we're on prog 2, mode, auto. I'll keep the M-fuse on nose, E-fuse off, drag free fall. Coming back, I'm going to go to my USC. And in this case, let's say I want to have 2 bombs come off per delivery. 2. And I'll keep my multiple at 1, so everything comes off in just one time. And then let's say I want to have 1,000 foot or feet between each of those 2 bombs. So I'll go 1,000. Now that's program 2. But the first mode I want to talk about is manual mode. So I'm going to go ahead and create a third program now for manual mode. So again, program, now I'm on program 3. Mode is set to manual. Mechanical fuse is set to nose. Same with everything else. I'll keep my quantity and multiple at 1. Now, the next one, though, is I'll go to my USC, and I'm going to go to my reticle option. And just like with the unguided rockets, I have a reticle here on the HUD, and I can go ahead and input a mil value to place that reticle where I want. So I'm going to go ahead and place it at 55 mils below bore sight. You can see it pop down. Then also down here on my program 3, I have a reticle setting of 55 mils. And it's really simple as that. And as long as you know your altitude, your dive angle, and airspeed, you can be pretty accurate with these. But if you're a masochist, have fun with that. But for me, I prefer CCIP and auto, as you might imagine. Okay, so speaking of CCIP, let's go take a look at that now. And rather than to create a new program, I'll just go back to program 1. So again, we have CCIP, quantity of 6, multiple 2, with a spacing of 500 feet. So I'm going to go ahead and now disengage my auto throttles, autopilot off. And generally with a CCIP or even auto delivery, you're looking about 45 or 30 degree dive angle ideally. So let's go ahead and roll in. Let's pause it here for a second. So up in here on the HUD now, we see we have CCIP selected as our mode. We have our DIL line, which is essentially our bomb fall line. We have our CCIP delay release cue. And the closer we are to having the CCIP cross indicating our impact point, the delay line here will come down until it actually intersects and disappears. And then finally we have our pull-up cue, just like on the gun and the rocket, where you want to make sure that your velocity vector is above the pull-up cue. If not, you'll have the brake X, and you'll be in jeopardy to be within your bomb frag pattern. Or if you're using CBUs, you may not have enough altitude to allow the CBUs to operate correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and pause again. And now I'm waiting for the CCIP impact cross to appear. And you see the delay cue coming down further and further. And if you have multiple pulses, you want to make sure you have the weapon release button down the entire time. And I'm holding down and watching
altitude.
All the bombs come off. And I'll come off. 15 degrees and off. And now you see those 3 separate impact points of 2 bombs each. And let's try that one more time. I'm going to get some altitude back up to about 10,000 feet. And we got a little bit of wind in this mission, so that's why the HUD is offset a bit. When you're in weapon delivery mode, you cannot cage the HUD. So let's roll in. And again, it's important that you have a long release time. You have to keep the weapon release button held down the entire time until each bomb is released. More of a shallow angle this time. Now I got my CCIP cross. Weapon release button down.
Altitude.
Bombs away. Okay, so that's CCIP. And one last element I want to take a look at is, as we mentioned in the earlier lesson, if you go to gun, now you have a hot gun, and now we have the gun cross up here on the HUD. And if you pull the trigger, you can also do the gun now while you're in a bombing mode. So next, let's take a look at the auto mode. And there's actually two different kind of ways you can deliver a bomb in auto mode. First is designating it through the HUD, and the second is basing it on a waypoint location. So for the first one, we're going to do it on the HUD. And to do so, the first thing we'll do is go to our second program, which is set up for auto. So now we're in auto. And now using the castle hat switch, or also called the sensor hat switch, I'll go ahead and move TDC control to the HUD. And that's indicated by the small dot in the velocity vector. And also on the HUD now, we have what's called the ball and chain, which is a dashed line leading down to a reticle. And what we're going to do is we're going to be using this reticle to designate our target point from which we'll calculate an auto delivery. And when the velocity vector intersects with the reticle, essentially the two will be bound together, as you'll see. Okay, I'll go ahead and bind those two. Now you see they're acting as one. So to set up the point here, I'm just going to place my velocity vector where I want my target point, and then I'm going to press down on my TDC switch. And let's go ahead and pause it for a second. So now the big vertical line is called your azimuth steering line, or ASL. The dashed diamond here is our target point. We see that we're in auto release. We have 24 seconds until release, and the range to the target we just created is 8 miles. Now, while we create the target point, we can also use the TDC switch to move that around. So let's go ahead and pause. And now using the switch on the TDC, I can actually move that around if I want to fine tune my aiming. And now what I want to do is I want to fly the vertical, the velocity vector on the ASL, and about 10 seconds until release, I'll hold down the weapon release trigger and wait for the vertical bar to pass through. Flashes indicating bomb release. You'll also see an arrow pointing toward the target, as well as a number above it indicating the degrees off. We also see a TTI, or time to impact, right below the auto indication. There they are. Now once you create a target, if you want to create a new target, you have to deselect it. And you do that by pressing the deselect switch on your stick. And we do that, we'll see that our ball and chain came back. Let's try that one more time. Okay, so I'm maneuvering to place my velocity vector where I want to designate the target. Here, TDC press, created, pulling up. Also notice we have our pull-up cue, flying the velocity vector on the ASL, 10 seconds to go, weapon release trigger down, 5, 3, 2, 1. Bombs away, flashing ASL. 20 seconds to impact, 18, 17, 15. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, impact. And of course now we'll go ahead and deselect that target, and we're back. So that's how you do it through the HUD. Now the other way you can do it is by first setting a waypoint over the target and then setting that as the target point. So to do that, I'll put in a little bank here, and I'll come down to my movie map, And I want to go ahead and select, I think it's waypoint 2. Actually, you can double check that by going to data, waypoint. You see that actually is target 1. So go back to HSI, and then using the waypoint designate button here, I'll go ahead and press that. And now we have a diamond up here on the heading table, and this indicates the direction towards that waypoint, which is now a target. So bring the jet around. And we got our ASL come up. We have a diamond pointing to where the target is. And just like we did on the HUD designation for a auto delivery, it's the exact same now. So again, we're in auto. We have about 32 seconds to go. Target's about 9 miles away. I'm lining up my velocity vector on the ASL, waiting for about 10 seconds. Flashing because it's off the HUD field of view now, the target indicator that is. Weapon trigger down. And 2 away. And now dumping that target. And those are the ins and outs of delivering unguided bombs in the Hornet in both manual, CCIP, and the 2 different auto modes. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.